professional life that, together with my various production teams, I was able to travel across the former Soviet Union and meet people who had never felt able to talk publicly about this history before. Over many years, and for a variety of projects, we travelled from Siberia to Ukraine, from Kalmykia to the Barents Sea, and from Lithuania to the River Volga. We met retired members of the secret police, villagers who had suffered at the hands of both German soldiers and Red Army partisans, veterans of gigantic battles like Stalingrad and Moscow, even Stalin's former telegraphist, who revealed how the Soviet dictator had nearly fled the capital in the dark days of October 1941. If the Berlin Wall had not fallen, and the Soviet Union had not subsequently collapsed, these witnesses to epic events could never have talked of their experiences without fear of retribution. Their stories would have been lost forever. This primary source material is especially valuable in the context of a comparison between the two dictators, because Hitler and Stalin made decisions in warmth and comfort that resulted in the torment of millions, and it's vital that ordinary people who suffered at their hands have a voice. It's important to treat eyewitness testimony with particular care, and I've written elsewhere of how we checked the authenticity of the material we obtained, and of the nuanced way in which it must be used. But notwithstanding these caveats, and after years of experience dealing with personal testimony, I've concluded that it is a mistake to think that individuals speaking after the event are somehow inherently less reliable than documents of the time. This point was first brought home to me with great force 30 years ago, when I was making a film featuring the testimony of members of a Slovenian unit called the Domobranci, who were handed over to Marshal Tito's men by British forces in the summer of 1945. These eyewitnesses spoke of the brutal way that Tito's soldiers had treated them, and of how the British had seen their suffering. But a report in the archives, written by a British officer at the time, offered a radically different perspective. It spoke of how well Tito's men had treated their prisoners, saying, "They were kindly and efficiently handled, and provided with light refreshments." This could be taken to demonstrate the primacy of documents over testimony. But when I interviewed the British officer who had written the report, he confirmed the evidence of the Domobranci, and said that he had been told at the time by his superior officer to lie. He expressed surprise that anyone could believe the words he had written in his report, since he had been deliberately ironic. How could anyone, he said, possibly think that Tito's forces would have offered light refreshments to their enemies in such a situation? I mention this not to suggest that eyewitness testimony is somehow better than contemporaneous material, merely to point out that historians must treat every single source with skepticism, nor, especially in the context of this history, would I dispute the enormous importance of archival evidence. Many times the discovery of a document that has been hidden for years has reshaped our understanding of the period. Think, for example, of the piece of paper Stalin signed early in the war, which authorized the killing of thousands of Polish officers, and which only came to light after the fall of communism in the Soviet Union. Notwithstanding my decision to focus this work on the period of the Second World War, I also discuss key events that occurred before these years, when an understanding of them is helpful for the narrative. For example, I look at the impact of the Red Army purges of the 1930s in the context of the Soviet Union's protracted war with Finland. However, I also thought it would be useful, in the introduction that follows, both to mention some other necessary biographical context and to foreshadow some of the major themes of the book. Though this is a work of history, I believe it is of particular relevance to today. There are still plenty of tyrants in the world, and some of them have the means to destroy us. Introduction. Hitler and Stalin both came from outside the mainstream. Stalin entered the world in December 1878 in Georgia, 1,300 miles from the heart of Imperial Russian power in St. Petersburg. Hitler, metaphorically, if not physically, came even further from the centre of German political life. He was born in April 1889, not in Imperial Germany, but in neighbouring Austria, in the border town of Braunau am Inn. Both came from ordinary families.